Val Kilmer as Jim Morrison. Val Kilmer, the man who didn't just play Jim Morrison, he became him. In Oliver Stone's The Doors, 1991, Kilmer went far beyond imitation. He wasn't just wearing leather pants and holding a microphone. He was channeling the spirit of a rock legend whose life was as chaotic as it was iconic. Before landing the role, Kilmer was already known as a versatile actor with striking looks. Coincidentally, he bore a natural resemblance to Morrison. But physical likeness wasn't enough. Morrison was a poet, a philosopher, and a provocateur who blurred the line between genius and self-destruction. Bringing that man to the screen meant diving headfirst into an abyss of music, madness, and myth. Kilmer's preparation bordered on obsession. For nearly a year, he lived and breathed Jim Morrison. He studied concert footage, rare bootlegs, poetry, and interviews until he could mimic Morrison's gestures with uncanny precision. He trained his voice relentlessly, working with vocal coaches to match Morrison's baritone timbre. In fact, Kilmer sang all of Morrison's parts himself during filming so convincingly that even surviving members of the Doors couldn't tell their voices apart. Physically, Kilmer reshaped himself to mirror Morrison's lanky frame, perfecting the unpredictable movements that defined Morrison's stage persona, stumbling one moment, exploding with primal energy the next. On set, Kilmer didn't break character. Oliver Stone encouraged him to remain Morrison even between takes, and Kilmer complied. His co-stars later admitted it was surreal, as if Morrison had been resurrected before their eyes. The peak came during live concert recreations, shot under scorching lights and with roaring crowds. Kilmer sang live, sweat pouring, voice straining, body convulsing with the same chaotic energy Morrison commanded in real life. The performance was so immersive that it blurred the line between actor and legend, even for Kilmer himself, who later confessed he struggled to shake off the persona. Though The Doors received mixed reviews, critics unanimously praised Kilmer's performance. His ability to capture Morrison's magnetism, darkness, and poetic soul made the role unforgettable. It remains one of cinema's most underappreciated transformations, setting a high standard for biopics that followed. Kilmer didn't just portray Morrison, he resurrected him for a new generation. Val Kilmer's Morrison stands as proof that an actor can transcend mere mimicry. He embodied the destructive brilliance of a man who lived and died by excess, leaving behind both awe and devastation. To this day, Kilmer's performance remains a touchstone for how deeply an actor can dissolve into a role, reminding us that sometimes the line between performance and possession is razor thin. Rami Malek, as Freddie Mercury. Rami Malek, the actor who dared to embody the larger-than-life force of Freddie Mercury. In Bohemian Rhapsody, 2018, Malek didn't just wear the crown of a rock god, he carried the weight of a legend whose voice, charisma, and vulnerability defined an era. Before this role, Malek was best known for his haunting turn in Mr. Robot. But Freddie Mercury was another universe altogether. Mercury was flamboyant, magnetic, and yet deeply private, a man who commanded stadiums but wrestled with insecurities behind closed doors. Malek had to bridge that duality, capturing both the performer who electrified Live Aid and the fragile human underneath the spotlight. Malek's preparation was nothing short of extreme. He worked with choreographer Polly Bennett to dissect Mercury's every gesture, the strut, the flick of the wrist, the way he wielded a microphone like a weapon. He wore prosthetic teeth from day one of rehearsals, forcing his jaw and speech to mirror Mercury's infamous overbite. Vocally, Malek trained tirelessly, though the film used a blend of his voice, Mercury's recordings, and Canadian singer Mark Martel's uncanny Mercury-like tone. The challenge wasn't only technical, it was emotional. Malek studied biographies, interviews, and private footage to understand Mercury's loneliness, his need for connection, and his battle with identity. The crowning moment came with the recreation of Queen's 1985 Live Aid performance. Malek rehearsed every second until he could match Mercury's movements down to a fingertip. The production rebuilt Wembley Stadium to scale, and Malek had to summon the same presence Mercury once used to command 70,000 people. For nearly 20 minutes of film, Malek wasn't acting, he was channeling. The power, the swagger, the vulnerability, all of it collided in that scene, creating one of the most electrifying sequences in modern cinema. Despite turmoil behind the scenes, including the firing of director Bryan Singer, Malek's focus never wavered. His transformation paid off in full. Bohemian Rhapsody grossed over $900 million worldwide, and Malek's performance earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor. For many, his Mercury was so convincing that it reignited interest in Queen and introduced the band's magic to a new generation. Rami Malek didn't just portray Freddie Mercury, he gave him new life. His performance captured the contradictions of a man who was both unstoppable on stage and uncertain in private. In doing so, Malek honored Mercury's legacy, while etching his own place in cinematic history. He proved that even the most untouchable icons can be brought back not through imitation, but through fearless immersion. Lou Diamond Phillips as Ritchie Valens. Lou Diamond Phillips, an unknown actor in 1987 who stepped into the shoes of a teenage rock and roll pioneer gone far too soon. In La Bamba, Phillips didn't just portray Ritchie Valens, he carried the weight of a cultural icon whose life was tragically cut short at only 17. Ritchie Valens was more than just a rising star. He was a Mexican-American trailblazer, a young man who broke into a genre dominated by others and left a mark that outlived his brief career. For Phillips, who was virtually unknown at the time, this role was both a challenge and an opportunity to embody a real person who had become a symbol of representation, resilience, and youthful brilliance. Unlike other actors in music biopics, Phillips didn't sing live. The vocals were provided by Los Lobos, a band that painstakingly studied Valens' original recordings. But that didn't mean Phillips coasted. He immersed himself in Valens' stage presence, the way he held his guitar, the innocence of his smile, the energy of his performances. He trained to play guitar convincingly enough to match every chord change, strum, and finger movement perfectly to the soundtrack. He worked with dialect coaches to capture Valens' Mexican-American accent and trained with choreographers to replicate the boyish swagger that made Valens magnetic. More importantly, Phillips had to embody the emotional reality of a teenager carrying both his family's hopes and the burden of his own fears. The most devastating moment comes not from the music, but from the looming shadow of fate. Valens had always feared flying, a trauma born from witnessing a plane crash as a child. Yet fame demanded he board that fateful plane with Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper. Phillips's performance in these final moments is haunting. His goodbyes to family are tender, fragile, and heavy with unspoken dread. When the crash arrives, the audience doesn't just lose a character, they feel the loss of a dream, a culture, and a promise unfulfilled. La Bamba became both a box office success and a cultural milestone. It reintroduced Ritchie Valens' music to the world and placed Lou Diamond Phillips firmly on the Hollywood map. His performance captured the fragility of fleeting fame and the cultural pride of a community finally seeing one of their own, represented with dignity and power. Phillips's Valens remains a testament to the idea that legends aren't measured by longevity, but by impact. Valens may have lived only 17 years, but through this film, his spirit continues to inspire. Lou Diamond Phillips gave audiences not just a performance, but a chance to grieve and celebrate a voice silenced too soon. Jamie Foxx as Ray Charles. Jamie Foxx, the comedian, turned actor who transformed himself into the very soul of rhythm and blues. In Ray, 2004, Foxx didn't just play Ray Charles. He became the genius, the addict, and the survivor, capturing every note of triumph and tragedy in Charles's extraordinary life. Before stepping into Charles's shoes, Jamie Foxx had already proven his comedic timing and musical ability. But Ray Charles was no ordinary role. He was a pioneer, a revolutionary who shaped the sound of American music while battling blindness and addiction. Foxx had to disappear completely, embodying a man whose presence was equal parts charm, defiance, and raw vulnerability. Foxx's dedication bordered on masochistic. To replicate Charles's blindness, he wore prosthetic eyelids, glued shut for up to 14 hours a day during filming. This forced him to memorize sets by steps, internalize geography, and truly live in Charles's darkness. His disorientation was real, infusing the performance with authentic fragility. Musically, Foxx had an advantage. He was a classically trained pianist. Unlike many biopics that fake the playing, Foxx performed live on set, mastering Charles's rolling piano style so the camera could linger on his fingers without trickery. He also studied Charles's signature swaying, abrupt head nods, and quick-fire southern drawl until they became second nature. Most poignantly, Foxx spent time with Charles himself before the musician's death, absorbing his energy, humor, and even his insecurities. The most harrowing moments came in depicting Charles's descent into heroin addiction. Foxx didn't resort to caricature. Instead, he let the poison creep in subtly in the slump of his shoulders, the desperation in his tone, the breakdown of his relationships. And then, when the music returned, so did the fire. His live performances in the film, played and sung with real skill, carried the weight of a man fighting demons yet pouring salvation into every note. Ray was both a critical and commercial triumph. Audiences were stunned by Foxx's uncanny embodiment of Charles, while critics hailed the performance as one of the most complete transformations ever captured on screen. The Academy agreed. Foxx took home the Oscar for Best Actor, cementing his place among Hollywood's elite. Jamie Foxx's Ray Charles is more than an impersonation. It is a resurrection, a deeply human portrayal of genius and weakness coexisting in one man. Through Foxx, Charles's music reached new generations, his struggles were honored, and his legend was preserved with honesty and power. It remains one of the definitive performances in biopic history. Angela Bassett as Tina Turner. Angela Bassett, a powerhouse actress who dared to step into the firestorm that was Tina Turner. In What's Love Got to Do with It, 1993, Bassett didn't just play a rock legend, she embodied a woman who survived violence, reclaimed her voice, and redefined resilience on stage and off. By the early 92nd, Bassett was a rising star, but portraying Tina Turner was a monumental task. Tina wasn't just a singer, she was an icon of empowerment, a survivor of one of the most abusive relationships in music history, and a performer whose stage energy was unmatched. To do her justice, Bassett had to master not only the movements of a legend, but the emotional scars of a woman fighting for freedom. Bassett's preparation was grueling. She trained rigorously, building muscle and stamina through daily workouts, dance rehearsals, and cardio conditioning to match Turner's explosive physicality on stage. Every strut, every stomp, every whip of the head had to look lived in, not choreographed. Vocally, the film used Turner's own recordings, but Bassett had to lip-sync with such conviction that it appeared as though the voice was her own. Every breath, every facial strain synced perfectly with the music. She also studied Turner's distinct speech patterns, mastering her cadence and emotional tone for both public bravado and private vulnerability. The most harrowing scenes came not under stage lights but behind closed doors. The brutal depictions of Tina's abuse at the hands of Ike Turner, played with terrifying intensity by Lawrence Fishburne. Bassett threw herself into these moments, enduring physically and emotionally draining takes to capture the raw truth of Tina's suffering. Yet the breakthrough wasn't in the violence, it was in Tina's refusal to be broken. The most triumphant moment arrives when Bassett, as Tina, finally leaves Ike, battered but unbowed, walking into the night with nothing but her name. That moment of defiance became cinematic history. The film struck a nerve, sparking both acclaim and controversy for its unflinching honesty. Bassett's portrayal earned her an Academy Award nomination, with critics praising the mix of ferocity and grace she brought to the role. Audiences were not just entertained, they were moved, empowered, and left in awe of Tina's real-life courage. Angela Bassett's performance remains one of the defining portrayals of female resilience in cinema. She didn't just show us a star on stage, she showed us the woman behind the sequins, the survivor who rose from ashes to claim her throne. Through Bassett, Tina Turner's story became not just a music biopic, but a cultural anthem of survival and empowerment. Joaquin Phoenix, as Johnny Cash. Joaquin Phoenix, an actor known for his intensity, who dove headfirst into the darkness and redemption of the Man in Black. In Walk the Line, 2005, Phoenix didn't just portray Johnny Cash, he sang, suffered, and bled through a performance that revealed both the myth and the man. By the mid-2002, Phoenix had already built a reputation for his fearless, transformative roles. But Johnny Cash was no ordinary figure. He was a towering icon of American music, a man whose life was defined by love, addiction, and faith. Bringing Cash to the screen meant capturing not only his legendary sound, but also the haunted soul behind it. Phoenix took the role with uncompromising commitment. Unlike many biopics, he refused to lip-sync. Instead, he trained for months to sing Cash's entire repertoire himself, forcing his voice into the deep, booming register that defined Cash's style. He studied Cash's phrasing, his timing, and even his breathing patterns. Guitar was another mountain to climb. Phoenix didn't just learn chords, he mastered Cash's signature boom-chicka-boom rhythm, rehearsing until his fingers ached. Alongside Reese Witherspoon, who trained on auto harp as June Carter, Phoenix rehearsed endlessly, building a musical chemistry that pulsed with authenticity on screen. The breaking point of Phoenix's transformation comes during the scenes of Cash's addiction and inner torment. He embodied the chaos of amphetamine-fueled outbursts, violent, erratic, and self-destructive, only to sink into moments of heartbreaking vulnerability. Then, in the film's emotional centerpiece, Phoenix, as Cash, stands on stage, guitar in hand, pouring all that pain into music. These live performances, captured raw and unfiltered, were not just reenactments, they were rebirths, moments where Phoenix seemed to channel Cash's tortured soul. Walk the Line became both a critical and commercial success, earning Phoenix an Academy Award nomination and Witherspoon an Oscar win. Critics praised Phoenix's uncompromising dedication, and audiences were struck by how real it all felt, as though Cash had stepped out of legend and back onto the stage. The film reignited interest in Cash's music, introducing his story to new generations. Joaquin Phoenix's Johnny Cash is now considered one of the gold standards of musical biopics. His fearless commitment, singing every note, inhabiting every wound, carrying every ounce of Cash's grief and grit, turned a performance into a resurrection. Through Phoenix, the myth of Johnny Cash became human again, a reminder of both the darkness and the redemption that shaped one of music's greatest legends. Taron Egerton, as Elton John. Taron Egerton, the young British actor who transformed himself into one of the most flamboyant, complex, and beloved performers in music history. In Rocketman, 20, Egerton didn't simply imitate Elton John. He sang, danced, and unraveled the emotional tapestry of a man caught between dazzling fame and devastating loneliness. Egerton was known for action and comedy roles, like Kingsman, but Elton John was a different challenge entirely. Elton wasn't just a superstar, he was a cultural phenomenon. His story was one of reinvention, flamboyance, and survival through addiction, heartbreak, and triumph. For Egerton, stepping into Elton's shoes meant embodying not just a performer, but an entire era of music, fashion, and cultural rebellion. Unlike many actors in biopics, Egerton performed all the songs himself, from Your Song to Tiny Dancer to The Soaring Rocket Man. He trained intensively with vocal coaches, pushing his range and power to deliver Elton's anthems with authenticity. On piano, he learned the hand positions and flamboyant style that made Elton's performances so magnetic. Physically, Egerton endured elaborate costumes and heavy prosthetics, oversized glasses, sequined capes, feathered bodysuits, each one demanding energy and presence. He also studied Elton's movements, the way he leaned into a piano, the cheeky grins, the bursts of swagger. But beyond the spectacle, Egerton immersed himself in Elton's psychology, portraying the fractured boy named Reginald Dwight, who craved love even while drowning in excess. The emotional high point of the film comes during the surreal yet heartbreaking sequence of Elton's overdose and breakdown, juxtaposed against his larger-than-life stage persona. Egerton balances spectacle with raw pain, showing the cracks beneath the glitter. And then, in the electrifying fantasy sequences, like the gravity-defying Rocket Man, he captures the euphoric highs of performance, turning Elton's music into both celebration and confession. These scenes demanded Egerton to act, sing, and dance simultaneously, and he carried them with fearless energy. Rocket Man was a critical and commercial triumph, hailed for its bold approach and Egerton's performance. Unlike the traditional biopic format, it leaned into fantasy, yet Egerton grounded it with raw emotion. His work earned him a Golden Globe for Best Actor, and more importantly, Elton John himself gave his blessing, praising Egerton for capturing his essence with both respect and creative freedom. Egerton's Elton John is more than a performance. It's a kaleidoscope of joy, pain, flamboyance, and survival. By singing live and embracing the surreal storytelling, Egerton honored Elton's music not as history, but as living emotion. His portrayal reminded audiences that behind the sequins and stadiums was a man fighting for love, identity, and acceptance, and that is why his performance remains unforgettable. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There's a lot more powerful stories, untold scandals, and hidden Hollywood truths coming your way. Don't miss what's next, because sometimes the most shocking stories are the ones the industry tries hardest to bury. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.